Next up on the tee, based in Chicago, Illinois, he's a popular name in the performance psychology realm. He works with some of the best golfers, athletes, and figureheads in the world. It's Dr. Raymond Prior joining us here on the Course of Life. Raymond, how you doing today?
Alex, good to see you again, my friend.
Yeah, it's great to be back with you. Our paths crossed recently. I was at an LPGA event covering content, some awesome players, and seeing you there was really awesome because it was really cool to see you working intricately with players in the field there. Just quickly, from an LPGA standpoint, we've been covering the tour a lot in recent years. There's been a lot of momentum in women's golf, but talk about that path for you working specifically with women professional golfers and how much growth you've seen as well.
Well, the women's game is growing significantly. It's becoming more popular in a lot of different ways. And also, there's a bit of an influx of resources, quite frankly, money in the tour. That is a really nice investment to see. And then if you put those women in the spotlight, you're going to find out they're really also very good at golf and it's very entertaining to watch. So it's been really nice to be kind of part of the underground, kind of the swell for that tour. It's been the most competitive golf um, in the world for the women for a really long time, but it's really starting to come into the spotlight a little bit more and get kind of more of the coverage that, personally, I think it deserves. And it's been really nice to see that. I mean, you and I saw each other at the first major of the season, and the way that tournament is set up with that course and the different amenities and everything, the fan experience, like it's a really cool thing to see.
Definitely. It's exciting to see that momentum and be part of it. And one thing I always say to the golfers out there, a lot of golfers that watch golf, consume YouTube, try to get better, they always try and emulate, a Bryson DeChambeau drive or a Rory McIlroy drive. And I like to tell them all, you are better served going to an LPGA event and watching these LPGA pros navigate around the course, actually see how they work their way around the course with their game. For you, in a mental standpoint, though, what do you think the average golfer can take away from seeing these LPGA Tour pros in action?
Well, you're going to need to see the same things that you would from the men, but what we might notice is on the LPGA tour, the margins are technically actually smaller because
Yeah.
they don't get as far. You're going to need to hit it straight, or you're going to need to wedge it, and you're going to need to putt it. So the margin for error between making a cut and not, in terms of like the strokes between the leaders and somebody who misses the cut, is actually narrower on the LPGA tour than it is for the men. So you're going to see people performing under pretty significant pressure, smaller margins for error between outcomes, right? And so what you'll see there is you're going to see that there's a separation between those who can stay composed and stay focused on what's relevant, those who recover faster, and those who are able to play more freely. So it's still an excellent observation in terms of like, okay, yes, there's something to be said about the physical skills and the strategy of golf, but also there's a human being navigating that performance behind it. And those that do so in ways that are more consistent tend to get better results more consistently and certainly perform better under pressure over time. So you're going to see that in full effect on the LPGA tour as well.
Yeah, definitely. The consistency is mind blowing with some of these pros that I follow along. And in terms of your background with golf, what I know you played some golf yourself, but what's your golf background? I know you played a little bit, but you're not quite out there touring with the rest of these pros. So explain what your golf path was and how you got into the coaching specifically.
Yeah, my golf path started. So, I mean, I think I played golf once or twice in high school, but I was one of the, we might say at the time, again, not to my own horn, an elite level soccer player. So golf wasn't really considered a sport in the circles that I kind of hung around in.
Yeah.
When I was in graduate school, my first stop in graduate school, which was in Ithaca, New York, I had the opportunity to start working with a couple of collegiate golfers. Really didn't know much about the sport at all. And I was, barely had my feet wet in performance psychology. And golf is a whole lot more interesting and seems a whole lot more like a sport when you watch people who are really good at it do it, right? And so I started working with a couple of players on the collegiate team. A couple of them ended up going pro and experiencing some success kind of pretty quickly, more faster than we might normally see from people. And one of those players ended up winning one of those tournaments we call a major, and said my name on TV. And since then, my phone's been ringing off the hook for golf. Whether warranted or not, I'm much better at my job now than I was then. In fact, those players were probably being successful in spite of me, rather than in part because of some of the work we have done together. But that was my entry into working with golfers. And then a couple years into that, my body wasn't really going to allow me to play soccer anymore. And so I naturally gravitated toward golf. And Since then, I play pretty avidly. Matter of fact, just installed the simulator at the house in the last
There you
couple.
go.
So I'm fully into it at this point.
Nice. That's how you know you're a full-on addict, when you get the sim
Yeah,
itself, for sure.
we like make your own drug, then you know you're into it.
Yep, definitely indeed. Okay, cool. So in terms of what you do for performance consulting, people are definitely sitting, listening. Wow, okay, he's worked with lots of different tour pros, major champions, and I'm sure there's this weird conception of what people think you do with players. I think people think that you like bring them into a dark room and spit some parable over and over again and cast some spell over these players that suddenly makes them better golfers. But explain what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis with performance
That's
psychology.
exactly what it is.
Yeah, I figured.
Oh yeah. No. So my areas of expertise are performance psychology, performance neuroscience, and sleep science. What that looks like is my job is to help people understand their brain and themselves. So neurology, psychology, and then also we'll work on trying to get your sleep into a place where you can be higher performing. And in that, start to understand those things and then train them in a way that allows you to essentially, like, I'm trying to help people perform more freely, more often. Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things, if we're just talking consistency is a relative term, it's not an absolute term. Right. If there was absolute consistency, there'd be no deviation in performance whatsoever. However, there's the domino effect in anyone's performance. So let's just say it's actually striking a golf ball. Well, there's equipment that goes into that. There's your physiology that goes into that, the line, stance, your core strategy, da 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 da. Well, all the way at the very beginning of that domino effect, whether we are aware of it or not, or whether we want to admit it or not, is what we bring to that golf shot. That's our psychology.
Right.
How that psychology is shaped then determines what our neurology is. So, for example, the neurology of distraction versus the neurology of flow state are very different. One is very facilitating for performance, and one is pretty disruptive, right? So, there's a domino effect that starts with us. My job is to help people get that first domino moving in a direction where their themselves and their brain are now facilitating their performance more often than not, and particularly at the times when they want to perform most. Most people leave these first two dominoes up to chance, in which case then it's very difficult to be consistent because if I don't knock these first two dominoes, I'm hoping they fall into a certain place, which at times they will, but most of the time they won't because we're performing in high stake settings where it's designed to be difficult to do so. So it's kind of like your swing. If you're just hoping you have a good lie and a good stance, well, what happens when you don't? Which is why you would practice those things so that you can train them in a way where you can modify it on the fly. Same thing goes with our psychology. So I'm a first two domino effect guy. And I joke with the swing coaches and the trainers on tour, like my job is to get them these first two dominoes out of the way so that your job is actually you doing your job, which is coaching a swing, coaching strategy, working through stats, caddying, and the player actually playing instead of fighting against your psychology.
And there's probably a lot of swing coaches out there. I imagine they're doing all of the jobs right now, right? Is that
Trying to? It's a lot to ask. Yeah. And by the way, anybody who's around anyone in a performance realm is going to be playing some role in psychology just because things are contagious with us as humans, right? So if someone comes up, if your caddy or your player is in a terrible mood, that is going to impact the other person, regardless of how resilient you are to a certain degree.
Yep.
Where most swing coaches are is they have a kind of, I would say, a surface level understanding of psychology because they see it up close and understand the trends behind it, but they don't really understand the good science behind it. And my job is to try to help fill that gap. To be fair, many swing coaches their self-study in psychology is actually pretty good. I've had some really awesome conversations with a variety of swing coaches on both tours who are relatively well versed in psychology. But again, like the golf swing, like to master it and to be able to teach it in an effective way requires years of understanding and dedication to a craft. So the idea that somebody's going to be a legitimate expert in two areas is an awful lot to ask.
Yeah, right? No, that's well said indeed. Yeah, very well. Good point. And I like what you said a little bit earlier about, the brain performance in golf. And people love to overhit this term of like hitting a bunch of shots and having muscle memory. But I think there's also some brain memory that helps the muscle memory perform on a whole basis as well.
Technically speaking, muscle memory doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right? Muscles can't remember anything. So for example,
yep.
How many steps have you taken in your life, walking or running?
Yeah, geez, billions, millions, who knows?
who knows, countless at this point, right? If I severed your spine, like you got into an accident and you became a paraplegic, would your muscles be able to remember how to make you walk?
Yeah.
They couldn't, right?
Yeah.
Because the connection between your brain and those muscles has been severed in your nervous system, right? So muscles do not have any neuroplastic or neuro memory type of capacity to them. Only our brain remembers things, right? So muscles do not execute on their own. And I kind of push back on this muscle memory thing. The intention behind it is good. Like if you do
Yep.
the work, your body will know how to do the thing. And that is the intent behind that is really good. However, it's a little bit dangerous to go, well, if I just practice this ad nauseum, it will just take care of itself when I'm under pressure, which is actually not the case. And any golfer will tell you that who is an absolute range rat. Oftentimes, those are the people that have the most anxiety because when I get to the course, my muscles won't just take over. In fact, my brain is trying to figure out, is this a threatening situation or is this a situation where I can pursue freely? Right.
Yeah.
So that when we learn a motor skill, for example, a golf swing, that memory and the process of developing that motor skill is happening in our brain, in our nervous system, not technically in muscles. Now, you can train muscles to be stronger, to be more flexible, to have higher rates of endurance, but they don't remember how to do anything on their own. Hence why if you're going, oh, let's just let motor or let your muscle memory take over, it's a bit of a dangerous proposition because they can't actually do that.
I like that. Thank you for breaking that down because the average amateur golfer just goes on and on thinking if I hit 100 chips these a day, by the time I hit 10,000, it's all going to be easier. Yep.
By the way, we'll be getting better at it, but that doesn't mean it's just going to happen automatically
Yep.
when four
It's
count.
here and it's up here as well too. Two different aspects. You're working obviously on the top one a lot more than the bottom one. It's Raymond Prior here on the Course of Life, and just getting into maybe my game or the average player's game. One thing that we hear a lot from announcers, let's say, is the term that the best players like Scotty Scheffler did at the PGA Championship find a way to tap into something that makes them X. Tap into something. What are your thoughts on that idea of players tapping into something? Is that something that they already have, or are they really reaching like a new heights in their game by finding something different in their mental?
Yeah, I think it's a really romantic and exciting notion to describe. Like, look, if I'm writing a broadcast and I want viewers to watch it, which means advertisement dollars and stuff, I'm going to try to make it really dramatic, right? So I'm going to say he willed his way toward victory, or he just dug in, or he had the intestinal fortitude, like all these things. What the science shows us is that's not at all really what's happening. What's happening for those who perform more freely under pressure is in one way or another, their psychological framework gives them permission to do that. So it's not that I'm tapping into something, I'm actually just allowing for something, right? We know for sure through decades of research, it's not willpower. If willpower was a really powerful thing for us as human beings, nobody would start and stop diets. Everyone would quit smoking cigarettes and nobody would be, out of shape and everyone would play great all the time. But clearly that doesn't work.
Sounds lovely.
Right. Instead, what it often is, if I was going to get really straight down to it for our psychological framework, those under pressure who tend to perform better far more often at this point in time, Scotty Scheffler is just kind of in and around winning all the time. It's that it's about their relationship with failure. The more accepting my relationship is with failure, which doesn't mean I like it, doesn't mean I'm satisfied with it, doesn't mean I'm not trying to win or play great, doesn't mean I'm comfortable with it, doesn't mean I'm certain about it, doesn't mean I'm settling for less or resigning. It just means I'm willing to risk trying and perhaps failing more than you are, gives me more room to actually pursue what it is that I want. So in the long run, you cannot freely pursue what it is that you really want, especially under pressure, if you don't also have self-given permission to try and perhaps fail. In other words, can't pursue what you want while you're also trying to avoid at all costs what you don't. So it's not that they're really tapping into anything. What they are actually doing is they are allowing for the possibility of failure, which then allows them to then go, well, then what do I want to pursue and how do I want to pursue it? By definition, that is more where stable confidence comes from, far more than something like outcomes or trust or certainty and all these things that sound really good on the surface, but they're not always available to us, particularly under pressure. So I wouldn't say they're tapping into something. I would say their relationship with failure, because it is not something that must be avoided, allows them a really long runway to stay in pressure and stay present in that more than other people's.
Yeah, and you know the really dumb version that the amateur golfer encounters is when they're having a really, really bad day and nothing's working, and then all of a sudden they just stepped up to a shot and do something different out of the box they hadn't done all day. They think about nothing, and then their best performance comes in that moment when they've accepted that idea of failure as well.
So most golfers can probably relate to this experience. I play a terrible front nine, play a great back nine. Okay, well, what happens? Did you all of a sudden acquire new skills between the ninth green and the
It
10th
must
tee?
have been the hot dog, right?
That's right. What happens usually, whether alcohol induced or not, is that my level of acceptance for having a bad day of golf goes up. So because it's already happening for 9 holes, I go, well, I guess today's just going to be one of those days. So my level of acceptance for having a crappy round of golf goes up, which now means I'm free on the back. Okay. Conversely, I play an amazing front nine between the ninth green and the 10th tee. I go, uh-oh, don't screw up this great
Yep.
round of
This. Oh no! Looking at the scorecard, this could be the.
this could be my best round ever, which basically translates to your brain as don't screw this up, which again, it's not a negative thought. It's a low acceptance, avoidance based motive I have given myself for the back nine. So now I'm not playing the back nine, actually trying to shoot the best score I can. I'm trying to just not screw up the one that already exists on the front nine, in which case, then I'm always multitasking between pursuit and avoidance. And there's a reason that when we multitask, we get worse at stuff. Our brain doesn't really multitask. It can, just not very well, which is why texting and driving is illegal.
Yep.
So you're texting and driving, you get worse at both, and there can be disastrous consequences involved with that. If you are trying to play well and avoid playing poorly at the same time, meaning like don't hit it somewhere or don't screw up your front nine score, best case scenario is you're distracted between these two. Worst case scenario is avoidance takes over and now you're playing anxious golf. And anxiety is a pretty distracting and a pretty disruptive mindset for golf.
Indeed. Yeah. So you do a great job of helping quell that for some of the world's best golfers. And I guess real quick, how does a typical, visit or consultation with a golfer go? Do they like to have you there for a tournament round or a practice round? Is it a solo meeting? I'm sure you do a little bit of everything, but what's most popular these days with players?
Yep. Can carry different shades depending on the person and what their needs are. Almost always, I've got some type of just one-on-one, I'd say conversations, sessions, you might say, with people, whether that's remote when I'm at home, or we might sit down somewhere if we're at a tournament where we got to talk through some stuff to either understand it, where I can start to learn about their experience more, where got to get away from the thing itself so that I can really get into the person and what their experience is. Then oftentimes, as we start to understand stuff and implement stuff, it can move to the golf course. It might move to practice. It might be walking a practice round. And, practice rounds can look everything from we are actively working on something from shot to shot, all the way to I'm just kind of walking and talking with them so that I can try to pick up some pieces that maybe over 9 holes, we talk for 10 minutes, but 6 of those minutes are really important stuff about their mindset and their focus for that week. Right. So it can vary greatly depending who the client is and what their performance realm is. But with golfers, it tends to fall into those just because that's where they compete.
Nice. Okay. One of the realm you're interested in the golf realm is with the actual professionals, the day-to-day professionals who aren't touring. We do a lot of coverage of the PGA of America and the Club Pro Championship, where the best Club Pros got the honor to play in the PGA Championship. And that's an interesting group of golfers because they not only play at a high level, they've also got the stresses of the day-to-day life that the average touring professional does not have. How does that performance consulting work with someone like that who's juggling two different things at the same time?
It's similar. The difference being that playing pro golf or playing in a competitive tournament isn't that person's primary livelihood. Now, it might contribute to it depending on, kind of how online famous they might be. But ultimately, they have a job, which is usually somewhere between teaching and running a golf course or a golf shop. And I'm trying to play competitively. So there is some balance between those. But the same pressures about and trying to figure out how to play in the golf course, whether golf is your job or whether it's part of your job or whether it is just something that you like to do, they're not that dissimilar.
Yeah. Interesting.
Right? To a pro, and I have to play through. One of the things I do with PGA Tour to be PGA Tour pros is that you have to take a playing test, and for many of them, it is a very anxious experience because if you do not pass it, you cannot reach the credential. Right. And so that's the same anxiety that comes with players who are, well, I need to make cuts to keep my card and make enough money, or to get through Q school, or whatever, or get through qualifying if I'm a college player. There are these actual imposed thresholds that you have to play and perform and score well enough to get past. Those exist for PGA pros just as they do PGA Tour and LPGA Tour pros or any other professional tour.
Very well said. Yeah, those club pro stories are fascinating. The one about resiliency that you'll appreciate is my buddy Ryan Linehan in the national championship. He played the wrong ball on the 10th hole, the final round, got penalized 2 strokes, and still made the PGA championship. So I just got to shout out Ryan because that was the ultimate sign of resiliency right there.
That is a situation where being able to accept what has happened and refocus on what is now relevant, which is not the fact that you played the wrong ball and you had to eat those strokes, but now what you have to do to give yourself a chance to get through is a really jarring transition for many people. And, we might say naturally we would expect that, especially in that type of a setting. So yeah, kudos to you, dude, for being able to shift into what do I got to do next to try to get this thing back on track, rather than could very easily dwelled on that and crushed himself for it and whatever, and all these things that we typically do when we make an innocent mistake. And that would have certainly derailed his experience. Instead of, in one way or another, he was able to shift his focus and actions toward getting back into it.
Really cool stuff from Ryan there. So Raymond, you do a lot of stuff in golf, but I was actually surprised to learn when I first met you that you do a lot outside of the world of golf with other people as well. Just quickly, kind of the different industries and other places that you've gotten to with this performance consulting outside the game of golf. What are some unique paths that have crossed you recently?
Yeah, I work in kind of 4 main areas. Elite sport is one of them. Golf is that, certainly part of that. The corporate world is one of them too. They call it executive coaching, but it's just performance.
Okay. Yep.
Performing artists, so that is your actors and actresses, singer, songwriters, producers, kind of the area where your performance, again, it's on command and there's a lot at stake when you do it. And then the other one would be, I can't say a ton about it, but some military consulting.
That's right. You have mentioned that. That's very cool. So I want to ask about the musical and the performing art clients that you've had. That focus is interesting. I think about golf and we try and focus for like 1.5 seconds at a time. And then we walk a bunch and then we try and lock in for 1.5 seconds. But a musical artist, maybe doing a performance or a concert or entire song or recording, are they coming to you in search of changing their musical style, or are they looking to come to you before a tour or a performance? What are musicians approaching you for consulting purposes?
Yeah, it would be the same things that golfers do. Oftentimes there's a layer of anxiety to it. Let's say, for example, so a client of mine, we spoke earlier today, this person had a monstrous first album, all the accolades and awards and money, and just sold out tour and the shebang. Well, if you do that, now people expect it again.
Yeah, the second album has to be 5 to 10 times as good, and the tour's got to be 20 times as big, right? Yeah, of course.
So this person is experiencing writer's block. Writer's block is the equivalent of the yips in golf, which is not some disease or some motor, but it's anxiety. Working exactly how anxiety is supposed to work, which is, what if this isn't quote unquote better? Or what if this gets screwed up? And anxiety works in 3 stages for our brain. The first stage is like hesitation, hold back, make you feel terrible, which basically means don't do it. So for any golfer who's had screaming at themselves, take the club back, and they can't do it, that's anxiety trying to get you to not engage with the threat before you have even engaged with it, right? So anxiety is a survival mechanism. Writer's block is, I'm not even going to let you get words on the page. Because if you don't put words on the page, they can't be judged by other people as less than, or you won't embarrass yourself. Right?
They're not even beginning the golf swing.
Mitigate risk by avoiding it altogether. That's stage 1 of anxiety. Stage 2 is, well, if you're going to do it anyway, I'm going to get you through it as fast as possible. So for any golfer who's felt that jerky motion in their putting stroke or their chipping stroke or even at the top of their backswing, that is your brain through anxiety going, well, if you're going to hit this thing, I just want you to get it over with as fast as possible to get us through the threat as soon as possible. Because again, what would keep us from being risking threat more is like the least amount of time we could spend. Right. So if you were being attacked, the likelihood of you surviving would be most indicative by would you get attacked in the first place? But if it's going to happen, the shorter the attack is, the more likely you are to be able to survive. Right. So stage 1 is the hesitation. Stage 2 is to get through it as fast as possible. So that's you're public speaking or if you're a musical artist at a concert, you're playing too fast, you're talking too fast. It's that extra energy just going, get it done, get it done, get it done. Which again, not necessarily a bad thing if you're being chased by a bear, not the best thing if what you're doing relies on some level of tempo and rhythm, right? Music and golf are two of those things. The last stage of anxiety is it starts to become an anticipatory response, which means that event then looks kind of like the one that's coming up. We should start worrying about it before we get there, right? So even though these two events are mutually exclusive, they look close enough to our brain that it goes, well, anxiety got you through that one fast, even though you went through it. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a bunch of anxiety for this one too. So here we see like anxiety becomes a learned experience over time. So whether it's a golfer, a day trader, or a hedge fund manager, or a musical artist, or an actor or actress, when we need to perform, there is risk involved, which is another way of saying there's some level of threat. There's financial threat, social threat, sometimes physical threat, competitive threat. Like all these, this risk exists if you're going to be in a competitive state. And our brain is designed to go, do you want me to worry about this? And unless we kind of take care of our first and second dominoes here, anxiety is a very natural response to risk because that means there's some level of threat. So it is one of the more common threads, not the only thing that I work on with athletes, but it is one of the more common ones. If you are in a setting where people are going to be watching you do something where the margins for error are very small.
Interesting. Yeah. And by the way, the threads between golf and music really growing a lot these days. Yeah. I feel like you're about to have a gigantic book of musicians who are getting addicted to the game of golf because I see those all over the place these days.
There are a ton. So just as if you're on the tour, you know that there's a bunch of players who are kind of have travel with an instrument to help kind of pass the time or just give themselves something to do other than sitting around a hotel.
Yep.
There are many actors and actresses and singer-songwriters and pop stars, wherever, who play golf between shows at times or some version of it, whether it's simulator. But I do have one client on his tour bus. He has a golf simulator.
Yep, I believe that. Totally. Yeah. I interviewed Pat Monahan from Train a few years ago, and he's like constantly just Googling like in every city, like where to play. And if he has time for 9 or 18 on show day.
Right. You know, and what, you know, if you look at the schedule, most concerts aren't starting until the evening. Most time they have some morning obligation, whether they need to pop in at a radio show or do some type of a social media. And then they have this big chunk of time in the middle of the day before rehearsal. Perfect time to go play. It
is awesome. Dr. Raymond Prior here. I found him not only following the LPGA, but through his BTS Mindset website. But talk about where people can find more about your performance consulting and where they can check out your golf book, Golf Beneath the Surface, as well.
Yeah, you can catch me. My website is btsmindset.com, beneath the surface mindset.com. My book is called Golf Beneath the Surface. Beneath the Surface is a bit of the theme of the book is getting below some of the surface level psychology that has been predominant in golf over the last, couple of decades, which again, a lot of great work and a lot of people doing a lot of really great work. But the research we know now about how the brain and how the mind work is well advanced in the last 20 or 30 years. And so the book presents performance psychology of like, here's what's actually going on underneath. So if you're a golfer who's looking for a little bit more than, hey, just trust it, or hey, you got to relax, this gives the explanation for the what, the why, and the how underneath. So Golf Beneath the Surface is available wherever you can buy books. There's an audio version. I think it comes in a couple of different languages if you're a more global audience. Or you can catch me on the Golf Beneath the Surface podcast that I host with my friend Chase Cooper, who is an instructor, a PJ instructor, works with a ton of really good golfers as well as a ton of amateurs. He's in the Oklahoma City area. So you can catch me there, hear a whole lot about a lot of the topics we've talked about today and a bunch of other ones as well.
Love that. Awesome. All right, Raymond, let's get to a few quick shot questions before we wrap up here. First, now that we butter you up, we got to go to war for a second because sure. I read that you are on a crusade against gimme putts. Now, I don't like that as an amateur that needs everything I can from inside 4 feet. All right. All jokes aside, I'll let you have a moment to describe and help us understand why you're against gimme putts.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a crusade. I would say it's more of a stance.
Yeah, I build you as like a soldier general right there. Sorry.
By the way, I look great in armor, but that's, I would just say this. Many golfers, imagine I give you everything inside of 4 feet all year long, and then you go play your club championship where you don't get gimmies.
Yeah, I'm a scratch then, and I'm about a 85 or 90 guy without him, I'd say.
Right. Okay. So most amateurs tell me I'm crazy anxious during my club tournaments or championship, whatever, because I've got to putt inside of 4 feet or 3 feet, and they haven't been doing it the whole time. Right. So, needless to say, you're likely to experience some significant anxiety. If instead I had to put everything out, first of all, not only would people's handicaps be far more accurate, but also it would give you an opportunity to have to face the possibility of missing a short putt, but also trying to do it freely and trying to make it. Even players on the PJ and LPJ Tour tell me, I'm scared of 3 foot putts. How often do you pick up those putts when you're at home? All the time.
Even them.
Makes right.
Yeah.
So, all that being said, most golfers would be better served not having. I mean, if it's a gimme, it better be like legitimately just a tap in.
Okay.
It would be better served at the times when they need to actually hole out if they weren't, if gimmies weren't so common.
All right,
Now,
we'll shake on tap-ins. I like that. It's a good agreement.
yeah, right. So again, that my stance would be if you're trying to play tournaments where you have to hole out, it would be better for you to hole out more often. Now, by the way, if you're never playing golf where you need to hole out and you don't like putting inside of 4 feet, scrape it up. It's good by me if it's good by you.
There you go. Love that. Raymond, I know you're in Chicago. Let's hit you with a couple random Chicago questions.
Sure.
Deep dish pizza or the thin crust?
I'm a hand toss guy. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Deep dish to me, I know it's blasphemy where I live, but to me, it's just a loaf of bread with some cheese on it. I don't want a loaf of bread. And the thin crust, I would prefer thin crust to thick crust, but hand tossed is for me.
Very cool. Yeah, I feel like there's been a bit of a wave against Chicago deep dish pizza in the last few years. I'm not sure what it is, but you're definitely part of that. Yeah. Other Chicago question: Cubs or White Sox for you?
Neither. My allegiance always lies to my childhood team of my youth, which is the Albuquerque Dukes, which is the AAA baseball team in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
I love
They
that.
they no longer exist. Now the AAA team, which is the affiliate for the Colorado Rockies, is the Albuquerque Isotopes. So if I was going to root for any baseball team, it would be the Isotopes, but the Dukes will always have my heart.
I need to get back to Albuquerque. I did a trip to that Hyatt Regency Tamayao Resort in
Yeah.
between Santa Fe and Albuquerque, and that was an absolutely
Yeah.
beautiful spot, which I highly recommend.
Just a couple of years ago, they hosted the PGA Professional Championship. The course there is called Twin Warrior. Or Twin
Yep.
Warrior. Outstanding, very difficult golf course. Outstanding. There's actually a handful of really good golf courses in the Albuquerque and Santa Fe area.
Definitely. Nice. All right, we end with our 19th hole question. So after the round's over and you get into your favorite clubhouse, what's your 19th hole or the meal and drink that you have to have after a great day of golf?
I would order an Albuquerque turkey, which is a turkey sandwich, cheese of your choice, but garnished with green chili. So green chili turkey sandwich.
Yep, love that.
Drink wise, so I try to stay away from, and again, here's the brain science part of me. Try to stay, if I played a really nice round of golf, I probably would a couple of days so that my brain would encode that information and learn from it better. Alcohol is a very disruptive chemical for us learning. But if I was going to have an alcoholic beverage, I would probably find a really good bourbon to sip on with my sandwich, or just a fan of like a really good lemonade.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Lemonade in the 19th hole seemed to hit just a little bit harder. I don't know what it is.
Right. It's just got a little bit of a crisp, a little bit of a tang, but a little bit of a sweet. It's delightful.
Indeed. Awesome. Dr. Raymond Prior, thanks again for hopping on the Course of Life. Check out his podcast and his book and look forward to seeing you down the road at more tournaments as well.
Thanks for having me, Alex. We'll see you soon.